Commander Syl Valen stood at the observation deck of the Aurora's dawn, hands clasped tightly behind his back, his gaze fixed on the swirling toxic clouds of Viridia 7. The research vessel had been orbiting the planet for 3 standard weeks, and each new data point only confirmed what the Confederation had already declared. This was a dead world, hostile to all forms of human life. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. Valen didn't turn. He recognized Dr. Alara Quinn's lilting accent, that perpetual note of wonder that he found both admirable and dangerously naive. "Beauty is irrelevant, Dr. Quinn. Viridia 7 is classified as extreme hazard. The atmospheric composition alone would dissolve human lung tissue in seconds." Alara moved beside him, her reflection appearing in the reinforced glass. Unlike Valen's rigid Confederation uniform, her research jumpsuit was adorned with patches from a dozen expeditions. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical knot, but a few rebellious strands had escaped, as always. "That's precisely why we're here, Commander. To challenge assumptions." She tapped a display panel, bringing up atmospheric readings that pulsed in angry reds and yellows. "Look at these pocket formations near the southern hemisphere. The sulfuric concentration drops by nearly 30%. Valen sighed. 30% of lethal is still lethal, Dr. Quinn. Not with my suit." Her eyes lit up with the fervor Valen had come to recognize, the dangerous spark that preceded her most reckless proposals. "No." The word came automatically. "The bioadaptive prototype hasn't been cleared for field deployment. The Confederation Science Division explicitly—" "The Science Division hasn't set foot outside a sterile lab in decades," Alara interrupted. "They're making judgments based on theoretical models, not real-world applications. Their models have kept exploration teams alive for 70 years, and stagnant for just as long." She turned to face him fully. "Commander, we've come all this way. We have an opportunity to rewrite what we know about potentially habitable worlds. My suit's adaptive membrane can process the atmospheric toxins in ways our conventional filters can't." Valen stared at her, then back at the roiling surface of Viridia 7. "The answer is no, Dr. Quinn. I won't authorize a suicide mission." Alara's expression hardened. "Then I formally invoke Section 12 of the Exploration Charter. Scientific challenge to command authority under special research circumstances." Valen's jaw tightened. She'd done her homework. Section 12 was rarely invoked, but it existed precisely for situations where scientific advancement might be hindered by overly cautious command decisions. It wouldn't override him completely, but it would force an official review and consideration. "Very well, Dr. Quinn. Submit your proposal to the senior staff. We'll convene at 0800 tomorrow." He turned to leave, then paused. "And, Doctor, make sure your will is updated before then." After he left, Alara allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't full permission, but it was a start. She activated her risk communicator. "Lieutenant Turok, meet me in Lab 4. We've got work to do." Lieutenant Rin Turok arrived precisely 7 minutes later. The android's metallic-flecked skin gleamed under the lab lights, his posture perfect as always. Despite being one of the newer synthetic crew members, Turok had quickly earned a reputation for exceptional piloting skills and an unexpectedly wry sense of humor. "Let me guess," he said, eyeing the scattered components on Alara's workbench. "The commander said no, so we're proceeding anyway." Alara looked up from the bioadaptive suit she was adjusting. "Not exactly. We're proceeding with a formal proposal, but I need to demonstrate the suit's capabilities first, which is where you come in." "I'm not wearing that thing," Turok said immediately, holding up his hands. "I'm not asking you to. I need you to help me access the atmospheric chamber, the one they used for the initial Viridia 7 sample testing." Turok's synthetic features registered something between concern and intrigue. That chamber is locked down after the incident with the sample gases melting through the secondary containment. And you want to... What? Lock yourself inside? With the suit, yes. Alara held up a transparent panel that would eventually form part of the helmet. This adaptive polymer can create a sustainable buffer zone between toxic elements and human biology. But Valen won't approve a planet-side test without proof. So you want to simulate Viridia's atmosphere in the chamber? Turok nodded slowly. It's possible. The environmental controls can replicate the basic composition, though not the pressure variables. That's enough for a preliminary demonstration, Alara smiled. Can you get me access? Turok's expression became unreadable, a trait common among androids when their programming priorities conflicted. As second officer, I could authorize a safety test of emergency equipment, which, technically, your suit qualifies as. I knew I liked you for a reason. Alara began gathering components. One condition, Turok said. I monitor from outside, and at the first sign of suit breach or physical distress, I terminate the test. No arguments. Deal. 4 hours later, after the main research teams had retired for the night cycle, Alara stood before the atmospheric chamber in her completed prototype suit. The translucent material clung to her form like a second skin, latticed with a network of microtubes filled with a bluish fluid. The helmet was the most complex component, a clear dome embedded with sensors and filtration nodules that gave it the appearance of a high-tech jellyfish. Turok ran a final diagnostic on the chamber controls. I've programmed a graduated exposure, 10% Viridia atmosphere for the first minute, then increasing by 10% each minute after. We stop at 70%. That's already well beyond lethal threshold. Alara checked her suit's seal. Let's do this! The chamber door hissed shut behind her. Inside, the space was clinical and bare, 6 meters in each direction, with reinforced walls and multiple sensor arrays. Alara positioned herself in the center as the intercom crackled. Commencing atmospheric alteration in 3, 2, 1. The first change was subtle. A faint, yellowish tinge to the air. A slight increase in temperature. Alara breathed normally, monitoring her suit's readings on the heads-up display inside her helmet. 10% Viridian atmosphere, Turok's voice announced. Oxygen being replaced with sulfur compounds and methane derivatives. Suit status? Functioning perfectly. The outer membrane is already adapting. See the color change? The suit's surface had taken on a slight iridescent quality, where it was processing the toxic elements. 20%? Now, the air was visibly discolored, and Alara could feel increased resistance in the suit's joints as it worked harder to maintain integrity. Still, her breathing remained easy, heart rate stable. 30%? A fine mist began to form in the chamber, the acid rain that perpetually lashed Viridia's surface. The first droplets hissed as they struck her suit, but instead of burning through, they were absorbed into the outer layer, their chemical components neutralized and repurposed. Incredible, Turok murmured. The suit is actually consuming the acids. That's the beauty of it, Alara replied, her voice steady despite the increasingly hostile environment. It doesn't just protect against the atmosphere, it processes it, the same way extremophile organisms adapt to impossible conditions. 40%. The mist thickened into a steady rain. Beyond the acidic downpour, the air itself had become a caustic yellow soup that would have dissolved human flesh in seconds. Inside her suit, Alara felt only a slight warmth as the processing systems worked overtime. 50%, suit temperature rising. Dr. Quinn, within parameters, keep going. 60%, the acid rain turned from yellow to a sickly green, pelting her suit with increased ferocity. For the first time, Alara felt a sting on her skin as minute amounts of the toxins penetrated the suit's outer layer. The suit responded, thickening its barriers and increasing filtration. The stinging subsided. 70%. This is our agreed maximum. Dr. Quinn. Alara checked her readings. The suit was operating at 87% capacity, strained but stable. Hold here for 5 minutes. I want to test sustained exposure. The minutes crawled by, inside the churning toxic miasma. Alara methodically tested each of the suit's functions: mobility, filtration, sensor arrays. There was degradation, certainly, but nothing catastrophic. Nothing that couldn't be improved with adjustments. 4 minutes 30 seconds, Turok announced. Chamber wall integrity is showing stress from the concentrated atmosphere. I've seen enough, Alara said, triumph evident in her voice. Begin atmosphere normalization. As the toxic soup slowly cleared, revealing Alara still standing in the center of the chamber, the door hissed open unexpectedly. Commander Valen stood there, flanked by 2 security officers, his expression thunderous. Shut it down, now, he ordered. Turok immediately complied, accelerating the air-scrubbing process. Valen strode forward as soon as the atmosphere registered as safe, stopping just short of Alara as she removed her helmet. Explain yourself, Dr. Quinn, he demanded. Unauthorized testing of experimental equipment? Creating a Level 1 biohazard without proper clearance? Alara held his gaze. I was testing emergency survival gear. Commander, Lieutenant Turok authorized the procedure as second officer, well within protocol. Valen glanced at Turok, who stood impassively by the controls. Is this true, Lieutenant? Yes, sir. Article 17 of Safety Protocols permits testing of life preservation equipment under controlled conditions. All safety parameters were observed. Valen's jaw worked silently for a moment. And what exactly did this test prove, Dr. Quinn? Alara stepped forward, still wearing the suit except for the helmet. It proved that my bioadaptive design can withstand 70% of Viridia 7's atmospheric toxicity with minimal strain. With the adjustments I'm already calculating, it could handle full exposure. 70% is not 100%, Valen countered. But it's 70% more than your reports claimed was survivable. Alara replied. Commander, we have an opportunity here. Real data instead of theoretical models. My suit works. Let me take it to the surface. For a long moment, Valen said nothing, his gaze shifting between Alara, the suit, and the chamber's readings. Finally, he exhaled sharply. Present your full findings at tomorrow's staff meeting. I'll make my decision then. He turned to leave, then added, And Dr. Quinn, if you ever circumvent proper channels like this again, I'll have you confined to quarters for the remainder of the mission. After he left, Turok approached Alara. That went better than expected. He's intrigued, Alara said, beginning to remove the suit. The data speaks for itself. Help me compile everything for tomorrow. We're going to need an airtight case. The next morning, Aurora's Dawn's senior staff gathered in the briefing room. The holographic display at the center of the table showed rotating models of Viridia 7 alongside Alara's suit designs. As she concluded her presentation, the room fell into contemplative silence. Dr. Merrick Sol, the ship's xenobotanist, was the first to speak. The adaptive properties are remarkable. Alara, if your suit can process these toxins, it opens up possibilities for my research as well. Viridia may host extremophile plant analogs we've never imagined. Precisely, Alara nodded. We're not just testing a suit, we're potentially redefining our understanding of habitable zones. Commander Valen leaned forward. The technical achievement is noted, Dr. Quinn. But let's be clear about the risks. Even with your suit performing optimally, Viridia 7's surface presents multiple hazards beyond atmospheric toxicity. Electrical storms that could fry your suit systems, pressure fluctuations that could crush conventional vehicles, terrain that literally dissolves under standard landing gear. Which is why I've designed this, Alara said, gesturing to Turok. The android activated a new hologram, a compact landing craft with unusual spherical wheels and a reinforced hull. The Scarab, Turok explained. Modified from our standard planetary lander. Acid-resistant alloys, pressure-adaptive cabin, and spherical locomotion system that minimizes surface contact. You've been busy, Valen observed dryly. We've been prepared, Alara corrected. Commander, every great discovery in human history came with risks. The first faster-than-light jump, first contact with non-terrestrial species, the neural interface pioneers. They all faced unknowns, and they all pushed forward anyway. Valen stood, circling the table slowly. 3 hours, he said finally. A controlled descent to the southern hemisphere, where your readings showed reduced toxicity. Survey from within the Scarab first. Then, if conditions permit, a single exterior excursion limited to 100 meters from the vehicle. Lieutenant Turok pilots. Dr. Saul monitors remotely. At the first sign of danger, you return immediately. Alara could hardly contain her excitement. Agreed. One more thing, Valen added. I'll be accompanying the mission. This caught Alara by surprise. Commander? If I'm risking my people on this venture, I'll be there to oversee it personally. His tone made it clear this point was non-negotiable. Of course, Alara nodded, exchanging a glance with Turok. We depart at 900 tomorrow. As the meeting adjourned, Dr. Saul approached Alara. The xenobotanist's wiry frame and perpetually soil-stained hands belied a brilliant mind that had catalogued more alien flora than anyone in the sector. Quite the victory, Saul remarked. Though I'm not sure having Valen breathing down your neck is ideal. He's covering himself, Alara replied. If something goes wrong, he needs to be able to say he was there, tried to prevent it. And if something goes right, he shares in the glory. Saul finished with a knowing smile. Smart. Still. Be careful down there. My preliminary scans show some unusual energy patterns in the southern hemisphere. Could be nothing. Could be something fascinating. I'll keep an eye out, Alara promised. And collect samples for you if possible. Just come back in one piece. The suit's impressive, but Viridia is still largely an unknown. That's why we're going, Alara said, her eyes bright with anticipation. To make it known. The launch bay hummed with activity the next morning, as final preparations were made for the Scarab's descent. Alara performed one last check of her bioadaptive suit, while Turok ran diagnostics on the lander's systems. Commander Valen arrived precisely on schedule, wearing a standard environment suit, bulkier and less flexible than Alara's prototype, but proven reliable in hostile conditions. Final checks complete. Commander, Turok reported. Weather patterns on the surface show moderate acid precipitation, but no major electrical activity. Optimal insertion window opens in 12 minutes. Valen nodded curtly. Dr. Quinn, your suit status? 100% operational, Alara replied, securing her helmet. Unlike the transparent version she'd tested in the chamber, this one featured additional reinforcement and expanded filtration capacity. The improvements I made after yesterday's test should increase efficiency by 23%. Should? Valen raised an eyebrow. Will, Alara corrected firmly. The suit will perform as designed. They boarded the Scarab, a tight fit with 3 of them, though Turok required less space than a human would. The craft's interior was spare and functional, dominated by control panels and monitoring equipment. Alara took her position at the research station, while Valen strapped into the co-pilot seat beside Turok. Aurora Control, this is Scarab, Turok communicated. Pre-launch sequence complete, requesting departure clearance. Scarab, this is Control, Dr. Saul's voice came through. You are cleared for launch. Descent window optimal in T-8 minutes. Atmospheric entry coordinates locked. Acknowledged. Control. Initiating launch sequence. The Scarab detached from Aurora's dawn with a gentle shudder. Thrusters engaged, pushing them clear of the research vessel before the main engines fired, beginning their controlled descent toward Viridia 7's toxic surface. The journey through the upper atmosphere was smooth, a testament to Turok's piloting skills. As they penetrated the cloud layers, however, the Scarab began to shake violently, buffeted by swirling toxic winds. "Turbulence increasing," Turok announced calmly, his synthetic hands making minute adjustments to the controls. "Hull integrity holding." Outside the reinforced viewports, Viridia 7 revealed itself in all its hostile glory. Sickly yellow clouds gave way to curtains of greenish rain that streaked across the glass, leaving momentary etches before the craft's protective coatings neutralized the acid. Through gaps in the precipitation, glimpses of the surface became visible, a landscape of jagged black rock formations, jutting from bubbling pools of corrosive liquid. "Magnificent!" Alara breathed, her sensors already collecting data. "That's one word for it," Valen muttered. "Lieutenant, status on our landing zone?" "Approaching coordinates," Turok replied. "Scanners show a relatively stable rock formation approximately 2 kilometers in diameter. Minimal liquid pools, moderate acid rain, survivable." The final descent was tense, the Scarab fighting crosswinds that threatened to push them into more dangerous terrain. With careful precision, Turok brought them down on a flat expanse of black stone. The spherical wheels deployed, absorbing the impact and adjusting to the uneven surface. "Landing successful," he reported. "External sensors active. Beginning environmental analysis." Data flooded Alara's screens. Atmospheric composition, pressure readings, temperature fluctuations, radiation levels. Everything matched her predictions from orbit, with minor variations that fell within acceptable parameters. "Preliminary readings are promising," she announced. "The atmosphere is precisely as toxic as we expected, but the pressure is 7% lower than orbital estimates suggested. That works in our favor." Valen studied the external camera feeds. "Those formations to the north, are they moving?" Alara enhanced the image. What had appeared to be static rock columns seemed to ripple slightly, as if disturbed by wind. "Interesting. Could be a mirage effect from the atmospheric density, or possibly some form of mineral reaction to the acid rain. Or something else entirely," Valen pointed out. "Remember, this is observation only. We stay in the Scarab for the first hour, monitor conditions. Then, if I deem it safe, a brief exterior excursion." Alara nodded, though her attention remained fixed on the readings. For the next 45 minutes, they conducted remote scans of their surroundings, mapping the immediate area and collecting atmospheric samples through the Scarab's external probes. "Conditions have remained stable," Turok eventually reported. "No significant changes in atmospheric toxicity or pressure. If anything, the acid rain has diminished in intensity." Alara turned to Valen. "Commander, the data supports an exterior survey. My suit is designed for precisely these conditions." Valen hesitated, studying the external feeds once more. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. Dr. Quinn, you may proceed with the exterior excursion. Maximum distance 100 meters from the Scarab. Maximum duration 30 minutes. Lieutenant Turok will monitor your suit telemetry continuously." "Understood." Alara could barely contain her excitement as she performed final checks on her suit. "Initiating full seal. Internal atmosphere reading normal. Filtration systems engaged." Turok activated the airlock sequence. "Depressurizing in 3, 2, 1. The airlock cycled, its inner door sealing Alara off from the Scarab's cabin. Through the small window, she could see Valen watching intently. The outer door hissed, then slowly opened, revealing Viridia 7 in all its unfiltered hostility. Alara took a deep breath, then stepped onto the surface of a world where humans supposedly couldn't survive. The first sensation was pressure, not crushing, but noticeable. like being deep underwater. The suit compensated immediately, stiffening in some areas while remaining flexible at joints. The second sensation was sound, a constant hissing as acid rain struck her helmet and shoulders, followed by the subtle whir of her suit processing the toxins. "Suit performing within parameters," she reported, her voice clear through the comms. "External temperature reading at 47 degrees Celsius. Visibility approximately 70 meters through the rain." "Acknowledged," Turok responded. "Your vital signs are stable. Suit filtration operating at 62% capacity, well within sustainable limits." Alara took another step, then another, moving carefully across the black stone surface. Up close, what had appeared smooth from the scarab was revealed to be intricately textured, almost crystalline, with strange angular patterns that didn't match any geological formation she recognized. "Dr. Sol, are you receiving this?" she asked, knowing the xenobotanist would be monitoring from Aurora's dawn. "Crystal clear," Sol's excited voice came through. "Those formations are extraordinary. Can you collect a sample?" "Working on it." Alara knelt, removing a collection tool from her suit's utility belt. As she chipped at the surface, the rock emitted a faint, luminescent glow where fractured. "That's unexpected. The material appears to have bioluminescent properties when disturbed. Possibly silicon-based microorganisms embedded in the mineral structure," Sol theorized. "This could be revolutionary." Alara. She secured the sample in a containment unit built into her suit. "Continuing survey. I'm going to approach one of those column formations, approximately 50 meters northeast of my position." "Proceed with caution," Valen's voice cut in. "Those were the structures that appeared to be moving earlier." Alara acknowledged and began making her way toward the columns. The footing was treacherous. Some patches of the surface dissolved slightly under prolonged contact, forcing her to keep moving. As she approached the formations, the rain intensified, becoming a driving sheet of caustic liquid that reduced visibility to mere meters. "Weather shift detected," Turok reported. "Acid concentration increasing by 12%. Wind velocity rising." "I'm almost at the formation," Alara replied, pushing forward. "Just need a few minutes to examine it up close." The column loomed through the curtain of rain, a twisted spire of the same black material that covered the ground, but shot through with veins of iridescent blue. As Alara drew closer, she confirmed what they'd observed from the scarab. The formation was indeed moving, but not as a whole. Rather, the blue veins pulsed rhythmically, like blood through capillaries. "Are you seeing this?" she breathed, adjusting her suit's external camera to capture the phenomenon. "Affirmative," Turok replied. "Definitely biological activity," suggesting immediate sample collection and return to the scarab. "The storm is intensifying beyond predicted parameters." Alara carefully extracted a small portion of the blue material, securing it alongside her first sample. "Sample obtained. Heading back now." She turned and froze. Through the driving rain, the landscape had transformed. What had been relatively clear terrain between her and the scarab was now interrupted by spreading pools of bubbling yellow liquid that hadn't been there minutes before. "Turok, I'm seeing new hazards on my return path. Appears to be some form of highly corrosive fluid emerging from beneath the surface." "Confirmed on our sensors," came the tense reply. "The storm is altering the surface composition. You need to find an alternate route. Suggest bearing 15 degrees west of your current position to avoid the largest concentrations." Alara adjusted her course, picking her way carefully through the increasingly dangerous terrain. The acid rain had become so intense that her suit's outer layer was now continuously rippling as it processed the toxins. A warning flashed in her helmet display. "Filtration capacity at 78%. Recommend reduced exposure." "Status update, Dr. Quinn," Valen's voice demanded. "Managing," Alara replied tersely, navigating around another suddenly appearing pool of corrosive fluid. The surface is becoming unstable, almost as if the increased precipitation is triggering some kind of chemical reaction in the substrate. A violent tremor shook the ground beneath her feet. Alara stumbled, nearly falling into one of the bubbling pools. She caught herself just in time, heart pounding. "Seismic activity detected." Turok's usually calm voice held an edge of urgency. "Multiple epicenters forming around your position. Dr. Quinn, you need to return immediately." "Trying!" Alara increased her pace, risking the less stable footing for speed. The scarab was visible now through the rain, its outline blurred, but recognizable about 40 meters ahead. Then, disaster struck. A massive tremor, stronger than the previous ones, ripped through the surface. The ground between Alara and the scarab split open, disgorging a geyser of yellowish gas and corrosive liquid that shot 20 meters into the air. The force of the eruption sent her sprawling backward, away from the lander. "Dr. Quinn!" Valen's voice shouted through the comms. Alara scrambled to her feet, backing away from the widening fissure. "I'm cut off from the scarab. The eruption has created a chasm at least 15 meters across." Inside her helmet, warnings flashed with increasing urgency. Filtration capacity at 85%. External temperature rising. Suit integrity compromised in Sector 4. "We need to extract you," Valen said firmly. "Lieutenant Turok, can you reposition the scarab?" "Negative, Commander," Turok replied after a moment. "The fissure extends in both directions beyond sensor range. Terrain is too unstable for safe repositioning. Suggest emergency evacuation protocol." "No," Alara interjected. "The Aurora can't send another lander in this storm. It would be suicide." She scanned her surroundings desperately. "There's a rock overhang about 20 meters east of my position. I can shelter there until the storm passes." "Dr. Quinn, your suit won't last that long," Valen argued. "The filtration system is already approaching critical levels." "I can recalibrate it," Alara insisted, already moving toward the overhang. "The suit has a secondary processing mode designed for extended exposure. I just need somewhere stable to make the adjustments." There was a moment of tense silence before Valen responded. "You have 15 minutes, Doctor. After that, we abort the mission and implement emergency extraction, regardless of the risks." "Understood." Alara reached the overhang, a curved protrusion of the black rock that offered minimal shelter from the driving rain. She positioned herself as far back as possible, where the acid precipitation couldn't reach directly. "Initiating suit recalibration," she reported, accessing a hidden panel on her left forearm. Inside was an array of microscopic filters and processing units, the heart of the suit's adaptive technology. "The primary filtration system is saturated, but I can switch to the experimental secondary mode." "Define experimental," Valen demanded. "It's a biological filtration system," Alara explained, carefully adjusting minute components. "Based on extremophile organisms from Tarsus 9. They consume toxins directly, converting them to harmless compounds. More efficient than mechanical filtration, but less predictable." "That wasn't in your proposal," Valen said tightly. "It was in the technical appendix," Alara countered. "Page 94, paragraph 6. As she worked, another violent tremor shook the ground. Fragments of rock broke loose from the overhang above her, clattering against her helmet. A larger piece struck her shoulder, nearly causing her to drop the critical filtration component. "Structural integrity of your shelter is failing," Turok warned. "Estimate complete collapse in under 3 minutes." "Almost done," Alara gritted out, her fingers moving with delicate precision despite the chaos around her. "Removing primary filter now. Preparing to insert biological alternative." This was the moment of greatest risk. With the primary filter removed, her suit's protection was temporarily compromised. Toxic elements began seeping through, triggering burning sensations on her skin and a metallic taste in her mouth. Warning alerts screamed inside her helmet as life support faltered. "Dr. Quinn, your vitals are spiking," Saul's concerned voice broke in. "Blood oxygen dropping, heart rate at dangerous levels." "Can't talk now," Alara managed, fighting the encroaching darkness at the edges of her vision. With a final effort, she slotted the biological filter into place and activated it. For one terrifying moment, nothing happened. The suit remained in critical failure mode, warnings flashing urgently. Then, gradually, the alerts began to subside. The burning sensation on her skin faded. Her heads-up display showed filtration capacity resetting, climbing rapidly as the biological components activated. "It's working," she gasped. "Filtration returning to nominal levels. Life support stabilizing." "Dr. Quinn, get out of there now!" Turok shouted. "The overhang is collapsing!" Alara lunged forward, just as the rock shelter gave way completely, tons of stone crashing down where she had been seconds before. She rolled across the toxic ground, coming to rest several meters away, the acid rain once again pelting her suit. But now, the adaptive layer processed it with renewed efficiency. "I'm clear," she reported, climbing to her feet. "Suit functioning at optimal levels again. The biological filtration is exceeding expected performance. The storm is beginning to abate," Turok observed. Atmospheric sensors show decreasing precipitation and wind velocity, seismic activity also diminishing. As if to confirm his assessment, the acid rain gradually lessened, changing from a driving torrent to a gentle mist. The yellowish clouds above thinned, allowing glimpses of Viridia 7's strange, purple-tinged sky. "I still can't reach you directly," Alara said, surveying the still bubbling chasm between her and the scarab. "But the terrain to the west appears to be stabilizing. I might be able to circle around the fissure and approach from the opposite side." "Negative," Valen replied firmly. "You've pushed your luck far enough. Dr. Quinn, hold position. Lieutenant Turok will reposition the scarab now that conditions are improving." Over the next tense minutes, Alara watched as the lander carefully navigated around the hazardous terrain, its spherical wheels allowing it to traverse areas that would have been impossible for conventional vehicles. Finally, it reached a position less than 10 meters from her location. "Dr. Quinn, proceed to the airlock," Turok instructed. Alara made her way carefully across the remaining distance, each step measured and precise. The airlock door opened, revealing the scarab's interior, and Commander Valen's stern expression visible through the inner door's window. As the outer door sealed behind her, and the chamber began to repressurize, Alara felt the full weight of what she had just accomplished wash over her. She had walked on a world deemed unsurvivable, had adapted to conditions that should have killed her instantly, had collected samples that might revolutionize their understanding of extraterrestrial biology. The inner door opened, and Valen stood there, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Quinn." "Commander," she replied, still breathing heavily from exertion and residual adrenaline. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Valen shook his head slightly. "That was either the most brilliant demonstration of human adaptability I've ever witnessed, or the most reckless disregard for safety protocols in Confederation history." "Why not both?" Alara suggested, a small smile forming despite her exhaustion. The journey back to Aurora's dawn was mercifully uneventful. As the scarab docked with the research vessel, a reception committee awaited them, Dr. Saul leading a team of excited scientists, all eager to examine the samples and data Alara had collected. "Before we disembark," Valen said, halting both Alara and Turok, "I want to be absolutely clear. What happened down there was unplanned and dangerous. The success of the mission doesn't retroactively justify the risks taken." "Understood, Commander," Alara nodded. "That said," he continued, his tone softening slightly, "your suit performed beyond expectations, as did you, Dr. Quinn. The Confederation will be interested in your findings." It was as close to a compliment as Valen was likely to give. Alara accepted it with a gracious nod. "Thank you, Commander." The airlock cycled, and they emerged into Aurora's Dawn's main hangar. Dr. Saul rushed forward, practically vibrating with excitement. "The preliminary data is extraordinary," the xenobotanist exclaimed. "Those blue veins you sampled, they appear to be some form of silicon-based vascular system. Nothing like it has ever been documented." "Let's get the samples to the lab," Alara suggested, removing her helmet. A collective gasp went through the assembled crew. Many had expected her to maintain full suit protection until after decontamination protocols. "The suit's biological filtration system has completely neutralized any toxic elements," she explained, noting their concern. "And more importantly, I discovered something while sheltering under that overhang." She activated a display on her wrist computer, showing atmospheric readings from her time on the surface. "There are pockets on Viridia 7, small ones, but they exist, where the atmosphere is temporarily processed by the indigenous life forms to near-breathable levels. The blue organisms appear to exhale oxygen compounds as part of their metabolic cycle." "Are you suggesting Viridia 7 is habitable?" one of the junior scientists asked incredulously. "Not conventionally," Alara clarified. "But with proper adaptive technology and a better understanding of the planet's biological cycles, limited human presence might be sustainable. We've been classifying planets based on a binary system, habitable or uninhabitable. What if there's a spectrum instead?" Commander Valen, who had been listening silently, stepped forward. "Dr. Quinn's discovery merits further investigation. I'm authorizing an extended research mission, with appropriate safety measures." He fixed Alara with a pointed look at the last part. "The Confederation will need to revise its planetary classification system," Turok observed. "This changes our understanding of potential colonization targets." "It changes everything," Alara agreed, looking around at her fellow scientists. "Today, we walked on a world where humans supposedly couldn't survive. Tomorrow, who knows what other impossibilities we might challenge?" As the excited discussions continued around her, Alara's thoughts returned to the moment she'd stood on Viridia's surface, acid rain streaming over her suit, the impossible landscape stretching before her. One step. That's all it had taken to overturn decades of established science. One step, and a willingness to question what everyone knew to be true. In the days that followed, Aurora's Dawn remained in orbit around Viridia 7, deploying improved landers and collection drones to various sites across the planet's southern hemisphere. Alara's bioadaptive suit became the foundation for a new generation of exploration equipment, with Commander Valen himself reluctantly testing the second prototype. The samples Alara had collected revealed an entirely new category of extremophile organisms, silicon-based life that not only survived in the toxic atmosphere, but actively processed and transformed it. Dr. Saul named the primary species Quinia viridensis in Alara's honor, a gesture that embarrassed and pleased her in equal measure. 1 month after the initial landing, Alara stood once again in the observation deck, watching Viridia 7 rotate below. The planet looked different to her now. Not a dead world, but a challenging one. Not impossible, just unprecedented. "Planning your next impossible expedition?" Commander Valen asked, joining her at the viewport. Alara smiled. "Actually, I was thinking about something my old professor used to say. The universe isn't hostile, it's just indifferent. It's up to us to learn its rules, rather than expect it to learn ours." Valen considered this. "A wise perspective. Though I'd add that learning those rules shouldn't require quite so many near-death experiences." "Where's the fun in that?" Alara laughed, then grew more serious. "The Confederation has officially redesignated Viridia 7 as the first Class A special planet, hostile but accessible with appropriate technology. They're sending a dedicated research station within the year. Under your leadership, I presume? Joint leadership, Alara corrected. They specifically requested both of us. Apparently, they believe your caution balances my enthusiasm. Valen actually smiled at that, a rare expression that transformed his usually stern features. The bureaucrats might be wiser than I gave them credit for. Together, they watched as one of the new exploration drones returned from the surface, samples secured in its specialized compartments. Each new discovery further confirmed what Alara had suspected. The universe was full of possibilities that existed just beyond the boundaries of what they had believed possible. You know, Valen said after a comfortable silence, when you first suggested going down to that planet, I was convinced I was sending you to your death. And now I'm wondering what other impossible worlds are waiting for someone stubborn enough to challenge conventional wisdom. He turned to face her fully. The Confederation has identified 3 other planets previously classified as uninhabitable that might, with your technology, be accessible. Alara's eyes lit up with the same dangerous spark that had started this journey. When do we leave? The commander shook his head, but there was no real exasperation in the gesture. Complete the research here first, Dr. Quinn, one impossible achievement at a time. As Valen departed, Alara returned her gaze to Viridia 7. From up here, the toxic storms and corrosive surface were hidden beneath swirling clouds that shimmered with unexpected beauty. She placed her palm against the reinforced glass, feeling the faint vibration of the ship's systems. One step. That's all it had taken. One step from theory to practice, from simulation to reality, from impossible to achieved. And now, that step had opened a path for others to follow. Explorers, researchers, pioneers who would push the boundaries even further. They had said humans couldn't survive that planet. She had walked out alive, and in doing so, had rewritten the rules of what was possible. Alara smiled to herself. This was just the beginning. 6 months later, Alara stood on a different observation deck, watching as the first permanent research habitats were lowered to Viridia 7's surface. The structures, domed, reinforced, and coated with a derivative of her suit's adaptive material, gleamed in the planet's strange purple light as they settled onto the now familiar black terrain. Historic moment, Lieutenant Turok observed, standing beside her. The android had elected to remain assigned to the Viridia project, his unique capabilities proving invaluable in the continued exploration efforts. One of many to come, Alara replied. The past months had been a whirlwind of activity, refining the bioadaptive technology, mapping the planet's more hospitable regions, cataloging the extraordinary extremophile ecosystem that thrived in what they had once considered a dead world. The comm panel chimed, and Commander Valen's voice came through. Dr. Quinn, final checks on Habitat 1 are complete. Surface team awaits your final authorization for occupation. Acknowledged, Commander, she responded. Please inform the team I'll be joining them shortly. There was a pause. That wasn't the plan, Dr. Quinn. Plans evolve. Commander. Alara's tone was light, but determined. The first extended human presence on Viridia 7 should include the person who proved it was possible. Besides, I need to assess the biological filtration systems in real-world conditions. Another pause. Longer this time. Alara could almost see Valen's expression, that mixture of resignation and reluctant respect that had become familiar over their months of collaboration. Very well, he finally replied. Scarab 3 will depart in 20 minutes. I'll expect regular status updates. Of course, Commander, Quinn out. As she prepared for the descent, Alara reflected on how much had changed since that first perilous journey to the surface. The Confederation had not only revised its planetary classification system, but had established an entirely new division dedicated to adaptive exploration, pushing the boundaries of what environments humans could survive with the right technology. Her bioadaptive suit had gone through 12 iterations, each more sophisticated than the last. The current version was lighter, more resilient, and capable of sustaining a human in even the most extreme conditions for up to 72 hours. More importantly, the principles behind it had been applied to habitat design, vehicle construction, and even medical treatment for toxic exposure. Alara entered the launch bay, where a small team of specialists awaited. Dr. Saul was among them, the xenobotanist having developed an entire new framework for understanding silicon-based life forms based on Viridia's peculiar ecosystem. "Ready to make history again?" Sewell asked with a grin. "This time with fewer collapsing rock shelters. Hopefully," Alara replied, checking her suit's seals one final time. The descent to Viridia 7 was routine now, a testament to how quickly the extraordinary could become ordinary with sufficient understanding and preparation. As Scarab 3 settled onto the landing pad adjacent to Habitat 1, Alara felt none of the trepidation that had accompanied her first journey to the surface. Instead, there was only anticipation. The team disembarked, moving efficiently toward the Habitat's airlock. Through her helmet, Alara could see the familiar caustic rain pattering against the structure's dome, only to be processed and neutralized by the adaptive coating. Inside, the Habitat was spare but functional, research equipment lining the walls, sleeping quarters partitioned off to one side, life support systems humming reassuringly. It would be home to a rotating team of 12 specialists for the next 6 months, conducting the most comprehensive study of a hostile world ever attempted. "Primary systems nominal," reported the Habitat's chief engineer, consulting a display panel. "Atmospheric processing at 98% efficiency. We're ready to begin full operations." "Excellent," Alara nodded. "Let's establish the sample collection protocols first. I want to—" She was interrupted by an urgent communication from Aurora's Dawn. "Dr. Quinn, this is Commander Valen. We're detecting unusual energy fluctuations approximately 3 kilometers west of your position, similar to the readings that preceded the seismic event during your first expedition." Alara exchanged glances with the team. "Understood, Commander. We'll monitor from here and postpone any exterior activities until the phenomenon is better understood." "That's not why I'm contacting you," Valen replied, surprising her. "These readings match the theoretical models Dr. Saul developed for his reproductive cycle hypothesis. This could be the confirmation we've been waiting for." Saul practically lunged for the nearest sensor station. "He's right. These are exactly the energy signatures I predicted would accompany the mass spawning event of the Quinia organisms. If we can observe this directly, it would be the final piece of the puzzle." Alara finished. The reproductive cycle of Viridia's dominant life form had been theorized but never witnessed. Understanding it would complete their picture of how this ecosystem functioned, and potentially explain the periodic atmospheric shifts that created momentarily breathable pockets. "We need to get out there," Sewell insisted. Alara hesitated only briefly. "Commander Valen, we're mounting an observation expedition to the energy fluctuation site. Saul, myself, and 2 habitat technicians in fully equipped adaptive suits. We'll maintain constant communication and return at the first sign of danger." "Approved," Valen replied immediately. Another indication of how much had changed. "Take Scarab 3 for initial approach, then proceed on foot, only if conditions permit. I'm sending additional sensor drones to provide overhead monitoring." 30 minutes later, the small expedition crested a ridge of black stone and beheld a sight that none of them had anticipated. The valley below was alive with motion and light. Hundreds of the columnar formations they had first observed months ago were swaying in unison, their blue veins pulsing with increasing intensity. The ground between them had transformed, developing a crystalline quality that reflected and amplified the blue glow. "Activating all recording systems," Saul whispered, though there was no need for quiet. "This is beyond anything I imagined." As they watched, the pulsing light grew stronger, more synchronized. The acid rain falling into the valley began to change color, shifting from yellowish-green to a clear, almost water-like appearance where it passed through the field of energy emanating from the columns. "The atmospheric readings are extraordinary," one of the technicians reported. "Oxygen levels rising rapidly within the valley perimeter. Toxicity dropping below hazardous thresholds." Alara made a decision. "I'm going to test the air directly." "Dr. Quinn," Sewell began to protest. "My suit can switch to passive monitoring mode while maintaining emergency protection protocols," she explained, already adjusting her settings. "If the readings are accurate, I should be able to breathe without active filtration." Before anyone could object further, Alara detached her helmet's primary seal. For a tense moment, she held her breath, then slowly, deliberately inhaled. The air was strange, metallic, with an underlying sweetness, unlike anything on Earth or the standard habitable worlds. But it filled her lungs without burning, without triggering alarms from her suit's medical monitors. "It's breathable," she confirmed, her voice filled with wonder. "Temporary and localized, but definitely breathable." "The Quinya are terraforming," Sewell realized. "Not permanently, but as part of their reproductive cycle. They create momentary Earth-like conditions to facilitate the exchange of genetic material." As if confirming his analysis, the columnar organisms began releasing clouds of microscopic particles into the transformed atmosphere, billions of spores that drifted on currents of suddenly hospitable air, cross-pollinating the entire colony. "This changes everything again," Alara said, watching the mesmerizing display. "Viridia doesn't just host life that can survive in toxic conditions. It hosts life that can temporarily transform those conditions." The implications were staggering. If this phenomenon could be understood, and perhaps even guided or enhanced, the potential for adapting truly hostile worlds expanded exponentially. Not just with protective technology, but by working in concert with indigenous life forms that already possessed the ability to alter their environments. "Commander Valen needs to see this," Alara said, resealing her helmet as the blue glow began to fade, the brief window of transformed atmosphere already closing. "The Confederation, too. This isn't just a scientific curiosity. It's a completely new paradigm for interstellar exploration." As they made their way back to Habitat 1, Alara's mind raced with possibilities. The universe had just revealed another of its secrets, another rule that could be learned and eventually harnessed. Not through conquering nature, but through understanding and adapting to it. Back aboard Aurora's Dawn the following week, Alara presented her findings to a virtual assembly of Confederation scientists and officials. The recorded footage of the Quinia reproductive event had created a sensation throughout the scientific community, challenging fundamental assumptions about how life could develop and thrive. "In conclusion," she said, addressing the attentive faces on the view screen, Viridia 7 represents not just a new classification of planet, but a new understanding of the relationship between life forms and their environments. The Quinia don't simply survive their toxic world. They periodically transform it, creating conditions that would otherwise be impossible. "And you believe this principle could be applied elsewhere?" asked the Confederation's chief science officer, a woman whose initial skepticism about the Viridia mission had transformed into cautious enthusiasm. "With the right approach, yes," Alara confirmed. "We've already identified 3 other planets with similar spectroscopic signatures that might host analogous life forms. And the bioadaptive technology we've developed here provides a foundation for safe exploration." "The resource implications alone are staggering," added another official. "Worlds previously written off as uninhabitable could contain valuable minerals, compounds, or biological resources. More importantly," Alara emphasized, "they contain knowledge, new forms of life, new adaptations, new possibilities we haven't even considered." As the meeting concluded with approval for expanded exploration initiatives, Commander Valen approached Alara in the conference room. "Congratulations. Dr. Quinn, you've changed the course of Confederation exploration policy. Not a small achievement. Alara smiled. We've changed it, Commander. Your willingness to reconsider established protocols made all of this possible. Valen acknowledged this with a slight nod. I received new orders during your presentation. The Aurora's Dawn is being reassigned to lead the investigation of Proxima Centauri b. Apparently, some recent findings suggest it might not be the radiation-scorched wasteland we believed. Let me guess, Alara said with a knowing look. They want us to find out if humans can survive there too. Indeed. Though perhaps with slightly less dramatic methods than your first Viridian excursion. No promises, Alara replied, only half joking. When do we depart? 3 weeks. Enough time to properly transition the research operation here and make necessary modifications to our equipment. As Valen left to attend to preparations, Alara returned to the observation deck, her place of reflection since the mission began. Viridia 7 hung below, still toxic, still hostile in most ways, but no longer inscrutable, no longer impossible. Dr. Saul joined her, carrying a small container of carefully cultured Quinia specimens, the first off-world propagation of Viridia's remarkable life forms. They're adapting to the artificial environment better than expected, the xenobotanist reported, already showing signs of modified behavior to accommodate the different atmospheric pressure. Life finds a way, Alara mused. We just have to be clever enough to recognize the paths it creates. Speaking of paths, Sul said, I hear we're headed to Proxima Centauri next. Another impossible world? Apparently, Alara nodded, though that word doesn't mean what it used to. As Aurora's Dawn prepared for its next mission, word of the Viridia discoveries spread throughout human space. Other research vessels began adjusting their parameters, reconsidering planets previously dismissed as uninhabitable. Teams of scientists developed variations on Alara's bioadaptive technology, each suited to different environmental challenges. The universe, it seemed, was not as closed to human exploration as they had believed. The boundaries were not walls but doorways, requiring only the right key, the right adaptation, the right perspective to unlock. On the night before Aurora's Dawn departed Viridia 7's orbit, Alara made one final journey to the surface, standing alone on a ridge overlooking the valley where they had witnessed the Quinia reproduction event. She removed her helmet once more. The air was toxic again. The moment of transformation long passed, but her suit protected her while allowing her to experience the alien world directly. The acid rain fell around her, processing through her suit's adaptive layer. The distant formations stood silent and still, their blue veins pulsing almost imperceptibly as they gathered energy for the next cycle of transformation. Above, the purple-tinged sky churned with toxic clouds that, somehow, now, seemed beautiful, rather than merely deadly. Alara took a deep breath within her suit, savoring the moment. This hostile world had become a milestone, not just in her career, but in humanity's understanding of what was possible. And as Aurora's Dawn prepared to depart for the next challenging frontier, she knew that this was just the beginning. They had said humans couldn't survive that planet. She had walked out alive, and in doing so, had opened a door that would never be closed again. Turning back toward the waiting scarab, Alara took one last look at the impossible world that had become possible. Whatever challenges awaited at Proxima Centauri or beyond, she was ready to face them, to adapt, to learn, to survive. After all, the universe wasn't hostile. It was just waiting to be understood.